these files have to be converted to WMV files and recordings from the class before I can mount them to YouTube and set them up, but I haven't had a chance to do that yet, right? So I'll be sure that they all get up there with plenty of time to review for exams and whatnot. But again, the class recordings are meant to be used as review, and there's just not even links for them yet. So once they are, you'll hear them, and you'll hear the sort of tinny recording quality that we have. We didn't have a reading for today, but we do have one for Tuesday to talk about Monet, and I wanted to sort of go back and look at Monet's work a little bit more closely, especially the early stuff, since the late stuff is what Herbert's talking about, and that's what we'll talk about down at the National Gallery. So I thought it'd be worthwhile to throw a few maps in here, simply because on one level, the only way I ever learned geography was because I liked art. You know, like, I'd actually Belgium, you know, and then you find out because you're interested in, you know, Rubens. So there's Paris. As you can see, the roads kind of all circulate around Paris in northeastern France. And Le Havre, where Monet painted the Impression Sunrise, is where the Seine River that works its way into the heart of Paris, right, where it empties into the sea. And I didn't, with this Google map that I just screen captured, I didn't grab the, the scale to tell you, but we're talking like, I don't know, it's harder to get from here to the eastern shore, right, or the outer shore of Delaware, than it is to get from Paris to Le Havre. It's really close, right? It's very, very easy access for people from Paris to go for the weekend, to go to the coast for the weekend. In fact, it's one of the, because as you can probably tell from looking at the map, it's about the closest seashore you could get to from Paris, right? Is to go directly there. And so it became a spot where many of Paris's well-to-do went. And at the same time, because the Seine River widened so drastically there, it became this major harbor. And as we read in the Tucker article, the second largest harbor in all of France, the largest being Marseille, which you can see at the bottom of the map down on the Mediterranean, which is a much larger harbor city to this day. So Le Havre was this amazingly large harbor city, and the city of Le Havre itself was not that big of a deal. So you read like it, not that attractive of a city, right? It was a big deal economically, but not all that attractive as a city. And that people tended not to go there, but people went nearby, right? All of these areas on the outskirts of Le Havre, places that today I think have probably been swallowed by urban sprawl, were at Monet's time like attractive, quiet beachside towns. Okay, so Le Havre was large and burgeoning, but the idea of suburban sprawl only came with the car, right? People lived in town because it was too much of a pain, to get back and forth into town otherwise, unless there was a rail service like Argentine, where Monet lives outside of Paris, right? It became more difficult to get in. So this is just a little geography lesson, right? There's Paris, and the superhighway that you see that leads directly to Le Havre, obviously was not there yet, right? There are no A routes yet working their way through. That is kind of cool. What the heck happened there? Let's do that. Let's go back here. Okay, now hang on a second. I gotta go here. Go to that, and we'll try it again and see what happens. So there we go. There's a close-up, right? And you can see where the Seine comes in, and the harbor. I'm pretty sure that the harbor that Monet paints is not the Seine itself, but you can see it's this harbor where the Delta region thing done. The arrow's a guess on my part, right? About where the view is. So what we're looking at here into the sunlight, right? We're looking for a view impressing sunrise, right? So you know if there's any question at sunset, even without the title, knowing the fact that he's looking into the harbor at Le Havre, says it can only be sunrise because the sun set in the west. It's over your shoulders, right? Looking out to sea. So since he's looking inland, it's got to be sunrise. And the cranes and whatnot you see over here are on this side over here. right? And he's on the left that we don't really get, and those smokestacks that we see in the map, or whatever, the inner part of the Bible here, right? And again, it's a modern map, so there's every chance that this has been changed through time, but the basic layout there. Okay, so a little geography. And it's worthwhile noting here that on either side of the sand, as it comes out, the Mojave spreads. This is also the verb of Mojave. There's no this way. But there was still kind of Omer and Yogi, Truby, Nogi. These were all Villa Canary. These were all little resort towns, right? Kind of cute. And there were ferries, right, that would go from town to town. So if you wanted to get off the train at the train station in Mojave, you could pick up a ferry and it would take you to the different towns, right? And that made it easy access for you, right? Right here, just outside of Mojave, you see how darn close it is San Andres. And our cover picture from our Kansas site is the beach at San Andres. And you can see how close it is to downtown Mojave, right? And yet, in Monet's conception, he's turned his back on all of that, right? This is the exact antithesis to the Impression Sunrise, which is this big industrial harbor, and as Tucker wrote, is this celebration of France's economic prosperity, right? And in this case, we don't have that sense of big industry. Now, we do see out on the coastline, right, on the horizon, we can see numerous ships and whatnot. We know that the English Channel, that's what this is, right? The North Sea is what the Europeans call it, and the English Channel is what the Brits call it, right? Because the North Sea to them is south of England, right? So that blue waterway is here, and we're just sort of looking up that direction, the beach of San Andres. And what we have is, instead of an industrial harbor, we have an incredibly quaint, rustic seaside town, a village that seems almost as if it's been utterly untouched by industry. Now, part of that might well be the date of the picture, the difference in 5 years that we have here, between 1867, before the Franco-Prussian War, before the defeat of the Paris Commune, before the invasion of the Prussians, Bismarck and the Germans, right? Before any of that, and the Impression Sunrise coming after that. This interest in celebrating a strong economy didn't exist in the 1860s in the same way that it existed in the 1870s, right, following the war. So, again, dates are important. Now, I think, this is fairly early on. Well, look, this is relatively early in Monet's career. And I want to sort of look at early Monet, talk about how he got to be where he is, as it were, as a painter. And some of the influences on him, his training and whatnot, because with Monet we're really sort of diving headlong into the Impressionists. Manet obviously was kind of outside of that. He never joined the group. But Monet's it, right? I mean, you think Impressionism, what's the first name that rolls off your tongue? Hopefully it's not Renoir. But I can say that because Caden is doing his paper on Renoir. I didn't try, but I like him. I said, yeah, you're fine. You're fine. You don't have to like what I like. I hate him still. Anyway, so Monet, we're really diving headlong into Impressionism here. And so how did he get to be where he is? I have a couple of details of this I want to talk about as well as we're working our way through, because you can see, I think, as we look at Monet in any detail, the degree to which, on a certain level, the paint appears to be spontaneous. But the reading we have for Tuesday suggests that this is in many ways an artifice. That this is a creation that Monet does to make it look spontaneous, when in fact it's every bit as deliberate as anything going back to the Renaissance. And that many times he's painting bits, setting it off to dry, letting it, once it's dry, coming back and painting over the top of it with other bits, so that some of the paint looks as if the paint itself has texture, but the texture is supplied by another layer of paint underneath it that's been left to dry. So this idea that he's got 5 canvases up, and he's going back and forth as the light is changing, and going, okay, I'm that light change, I'll go over this one over here and do that instead. That's really is kind of a myth about Monet that doesn't really stand up to a close examination of the pictures. Now, this is not to say that some of them aren't sketchy. Some of them are. Some of them are very quickly done. But if you look, for example, at the base of the boat, and I'll turn my little pen on here, right? If we look at the base of the boat here, right, you can see that the boat has been painted down, and they pulled some of the color from the sand back up over the top in what appears to be a brush stroke that's just kind of one quick wet stroke over dry, like that. But at the same time, the boat has to be dry for that paint to grab in the way that it is. This is even more apparent if we look at this area back here. And you can see that white that makes the waves that from a distance turns into the breaking foam of the sea is here dry brush catching some sort of texture. Right? Can you make that out okay? Right? Those white bits. So there's some sort of texture bit applied to the bit. Maybe you can some sort of texture that when you come back over that texture with the brush, it only hits the mountaintop. So I lift my fingertips. Going across the top of my knuckles without getting into the fingers. That's correct? Just looking at the top of it. So it's grabbing it at a certain point. And that means that that layer of paint is put on when all the rest of the paint is dry. And it's oil paint, right? It's not acrylic, it's oil paint. Oil paint takes a fair amount of time to dry. So the idea that we can set up this canvas and 20 minutes later we'll hold the finished painting that is refreshing is something that Monet, throughout his entire career, is trying to create. Right? It's an illusion that he's trying to create, one of spontaneity. And it fits in many ways with the kinds of scenes he chooses in her fleeting moments. And the fact that much of it seems to focus on the changing light patterns. He loves water, for example. It's very hard to find Monet pictures that don't have a lot of water in them. I mean, they're there, but for the most part, that's his thing. Because with water, you get this interplay between shifting light, shifting reflections, and permanent things, like houses, like hills, like boats, solid things versus unsolid things. And he loves playing those things back and forth across each other. Right? So it's a bit of an artifice what he's up to here. And you'll notice the people. I think I don't have lecture notes for this. I haven't had lecture notes for this entire class. It's just obvious. So it goes off on tangents, right? But this little family here, right? There's a family of fishermen. And what time of day is this? More like afternoon, like we pulled in at the end of the day. It doesn't look like dawn or anything. And they've all sort of gathered around, and there's Dad and Mom. And does she have a child? Right here? You know, to the head of it, but there's a family, and there's 3 or 4 kids as well. She's a busy woman. He's a busy man, either way you look at it. And I love the way that the eldest, I assume he's a son, is painted with the same color as Dad. That's wearing the same coat, if you will, that his father is. And each of them looks as if it's painted with a single brush that he's loaded with both blue and white. And one of the things that the Herbert article gets into is that sometimes he's faking that. Right? He's making it look as if he did it just genius one stroke of paint. When in fact it's sometimes it's 2 strokes that he blends to make it look like 1 stroke. Which is, I think in many ways, kind of more phenomenal than what I mentioned before. It was like, look, he loaded the brush with 2 types of paint at once and painted it. Well, now he made it look like he did. Right? To give you that sense of spontaneity. I also think, and the more I look at paintings, and the more I think about the time that I used to paint 30 years ago or so, I'm always amazed at how often backgrounds are painted after the foreground. That's not the way we tend to think about. You lay it down and then you come back in and paint the things, so that you build it up almost as the same way that you build things up in space, right? So you start from the back and you start to put things in front of that background, in the same way they would be in front of it on the canvas, right? But if you look at the blue here, in that section, that sea is painted well after not only the boat, but even if you look at the brush strokes, it's painted up and around the heads of the seated figures. Can you see that? Right? So just in here, you can see that the brush stroke follows. So the sea color is kind of in the end. And it could be that you want to change the color to something else to make the composition work, or it could be that he's more interested in walking out. So with that, green speaker is definitely on top of the boat. I think that's pretty obvious when you look at that section right there. Right? And it's true even over here, where we brought that paint right up to use it to give us the profile of this total space. Or on the back here, to give us how those waves fit in. And then I think the tide changed, right? And while he's painting up there, he goes back in and looking out the tides further in. I like that color better than having this all just be sand. Right? But it's fascinating the degree to which the sort of ways that one might expect a painter to proceed, right? Constructing in micro layers exactly the layers of space that we see isn't often the case, right? And again, I said this for you guys before, and it's a broken record, but there's always this, you don't need us, right? The National Gallery is free. You don't need to take art classes anymore. Just go to the National Gallery and spend some time looking closely, right? Get a little telescope and stare. Or call up the education department and say, hey, I want to set up my easel in one of the galleries, and they'll let you. Right? Another nice detail. I can't really tell what all these things are. Piling is, for example. When I was home last night putting this together, I began to think that was some sort of thing with a big bulbous blue head on it, right? Some sort of machine. But now I think it's just that's in the background and this sort of pilings in the foreground. But again, those highlights of wet sand that are catching the sunlight are sort of the last things he put in, aren't they? Right? Look at it especially around the man standing behind the boat, chatting with that red face. And then look at the highlights of the wet sand on either side of his shoulders. And you can see that is the last thing he's added. And that kind of makes sense, I guess, because glistening things ought to be the last thing you put down, right? In the same way that when you see reflections, they're on the top of whatever you see. But again, this picture, I think, is as much focused on this unspoiled rural life as it is on anything urban. And that's because, as we sort of mentioned a few times ago, that the Impressionist movement grew out of this earlier movement in art called realism, which focused on the honorable lives of rural French society. So you might remember the Stonebreakers by Courbet, right? Or Millet's Gleaners, right? Picking up the last of the harvest. Those were realist works, and they're focusing very much on the struggles of the working poor, but also their dignity despite those struggles. And early Monet grows right directly out of that. And this is quite early. He'd only been an independent artist for 2 or 3 years by this point. This is really early in his career. Right? He's 27. Right? He's born in 1840. So I don't hate him, don't you? He's good. He's kind of good from the get-go. But you'll be happy when we get to Cezanne. He sucks until he's 40. So that always gave me great heart when I was an undergrad. I think that Monet could suck, or that Cezanne could suck. You'll notice that some of these are, in fact, sailboats as well. We have that prominent mast laid there as well, directly in the foreground as we try to read what we're looking at. Now, a little bit on Monet's background. Monet had grown up in Le Havre, so this area, Saint-Adresse here, and the Impressionist sunrise scene that we saw, those are the areas of his youth. he was born in Paris, but he moved to Le Havre like his family did, right, when he was really, really young. So really all of his memories of childhood are memories of Le Havre. And it's so easy to get there. It's not like it's a great trek when he moves to Paris, right, to get back. When he's a teenager still, 15 years old or so, a local artist working around the vicinity of Le Havre recognizes his talent and starts to give him lessons. And this artist is Eugène Boudin, whose name, by the way, means sausage in French. So Boudin is a particular kind of sausage. Boudin noir are blood sausages, black sausages, and a Boudin blanc is a Weisswurst in German, right? So Eugène, sausage man. Yeah. But we have a number of these at the National Gallery, and none of them are very big. But we talked before about some of the prototypes, some of the harbingers of Impressionism. We looked at the Fontainebleau painters. Well, Boudin is another one, and he's working, like I said, along the beaches of the North Sea, right near Le Havre, these wonderful little resort towns, right, that people come to. And what he's done is to set up his easel and his paintings right on the side of the sea. And he would be painting what he was seeing at the time while outside. Now, this is before the Impressionists. There's this great myth that the Impressionists were the first to paint outside. They weren't. They were the first to make it like, you got to do it, right? But other people had been doing it. Boudin's one of them. So he's painting outside, and he's painting these scenes of the people that he's looking at. He's trying to sell it to them on the way out. That means they're not really portraits of people. They're not really portraits of the dresses of the people that are there, but they're sort of familiar to them. Does that make sense? This was what today was like. A souvenir piece from your time. And none of them are much bigger, than maybe the size of that computer. Sometimes even as small as a laptop, right? They're not very big pictures on the North. And that's because the majority of them are souvenir pictures. And many of them still have sand stuck into the paint, right? Because on a windy day, people be walking, dogs would be running, kick up the sand and it would into the wet paint, right? He's not putting it there on purpose. It just got stuck, right? And so he's painting outside. He takes interest in Monet and he says, hey, let's do some work together. And so in the 1850s already, Monet is under the tutelage of Boudin, right? Working outside Le Havre, where he's growing up, at these little village resorts, and learning the benefits of painting outside. And Boudin, I think many of these are also finished in the studio as well, but you can see that as much as the people themselves are the focal point here, and I've got some details to show you. In as much as the people are very much the focus, so is the weather pattern, isn't it? It's this idea of a windy day and how the light can break at dusk and why you wait around on the beach. And it's just such a different beach-going experience as we sort of think of when we think of it, right? Here, there's no bikinis or burkinis for that matter. Right here, everybody's just nicely dressed and enjoying the oxidized air from the sea and with some very fine clothes on. And at the same time, painted briskly, right? Painted quickly. But as much interested in the wind that blows through the scene as he is in capturing sort of the interplay of the different people themselves. So fine people out at sea, and you can imagine someone like that man with the derby wanted to buy a picture like this on leaving the beach at Villeurville, going back to Paris. I like me a dog, so here's a nice photo close-up of the dog. But also, just look how beautifully that bluish purple dress is painted. He's a really good painter. And much of that translates into Monet. This was painted the same year that Monet sort of became independent, right? But he'd been studying with Boudin much earlier than this. But again, it's sketchy, right? It's impressionistic, even though he taught one of the Impressionist painters how to do it, right? How to make it work. And again, with the figures and the faces, you can see there's no attempt to try to sharpen anything. Again, it's capturing a feeling as much as it is capturing anything else. I didn't realize that he did drawings, and this is up at a show right now at the National Gallery, a nice little Boudin drawing of someone at the beach as well. So many of these things might have been equally done in the studio where he's out there making sketches of people at the same time doing finished works, all part of this marketing of these pictures to the tourists, right? This is still out on display in that little Mellon, the Gift of Paul Mellon show. So you can see it off to the left. And as soon as I thought, that has got to be a Boudin because it just looks like all these paintings, right, that have a slight redundancy, but I think are really quite charming. We've got a good dozen of them in the National Gallery. I'm not going to show you, but I think it's great. Still, as we look at this detail on the left, you can see the way in which he's handling the fall of light across the low tide behind the heads of the people, and picking up those greens and mauves and blues and yellows, really trying to capture the sense of how light itself is color, right? And how the painting itself is as much about color as anything. Here's a picture of one of the docks with the ferry coming in to pick up the people to take them back to Le Havre. And you can see that great, huge line of people waiting for the ferry to take them in. But that little jetty also welcoming a pleasure boat sailing. And again, capturing not only a particular time of day, but a particular pattern of weather here as well. It's almost like it's never still. I don't want to say this, I'm not listed on a ton of Boudin, but it seems like the good ones aren't still, right? There's always something palpable happening in nature itself, even though everything's arranged in such a common sort of, you don't mistake these for other kinds of, no mistaking a Boudin painting, right? They have that similarity to them. And it's not boring or anything. And it isn't, again, keeping in mind that the idea is not to have a show of 10 of these together, but to try to sell them to 10 of the different people who are there. Right? Good details coming in as well. French flag flying. Another puppy. A couple of them, actually. One in this detail. Interest in the smoke dissipating into the sky. How similar that is to the clouds themselves above. The wind, don't want to say whipping, but tracing through the flags everywhere, helping that boat to pull itself out of the harbor, move out into the open sea. There's a sense of trying to, if you were out there sailing all day, wouldn't you love a picture like that? It's like, here it is, there. Get out before that ferry starts moving fast and chop up the water too much, right? You're going to get out on the smooth. There's our other puppy running around as well with the kids. And again, we think about France at this time, the women are all traveling in packs, right? Women not out by themselves. But this sort of vacation allowed a certain bit of more freedom, but at the same time, they'd never be out there all by themselves. I didn't get them too bad. I loved a couple on the bench, too, hunkered down. And not the end of their lives by any means, but you sort of, you can tell, you can sense the weariness at the end of the holiday. That time when you wish you'd taken, whenever I book a holiday, I always book it to come, squeeze as much time out of the holiday as you can. You come back and you go back to work the next day, and you really should put a day in there just to chill out at home because, the couple on the bench need that, right? They need to come back and relax before they go back to work. One last one, painting time at Deauville, where you can see that these beaches were set up, changing rooms for swimming. Of course, their bathing suits are not like ours by any means, right? They really were suits, what we call them bathing suits, right? Is because men would come down to your knees, right? And sometimes have shoulder straps, and women have bloomers around the hips and whatnot. But there's still a place to change out of your city clothes and into something where you can actually enjoy the sea. We have the man with the horse. I can't really tell for sure, but the horse looks like it's dragging something. There's every chance that is getting seafood, shrimp, for example, in the tidewaters or clams. is my guess as much as anything. Could also just be looking for tchotchkes, just for gift toys and things that you might find at the beach. Cool agates, right? But when we see horses like that dragging something, they're usually dragging for seafood. So it's, again, local industry. Right? We see it all across the coast. These little gray shrimp called garnal in Dutch, crevet gris in French, gray shrimps. Can't get them here. They don't taste like shrimp. They taste like, they're fantastic, right? They taste like the ocean, in a really good way. But they only grow, as far as I know, anywhere in the world on the North Sea, so it's a bit of a commodity up there. Again, another dog. But people gathered around with their chairs, and these would all be put out by the resorts that were along the beach, right? And then the people gathered together to enjoy a day at the beach. And if you've ever been to the beach and had it be too windy, you know that huddling up is what you do, right? You circle the wagons, as it were. Pull in some driftwood or something to tell you that it's going to get bitterly cold pretty quick. This doesn't look like it's all that cold, although some people obviously have a lower, or I guess a higher body temperature than others because they seem huddled back. Look at that wonderful blue coming off the hat on the far left, and how it just dissipates into the background. Isn't that just gorgeous? That cobalt on that hat. Again, just the paint just dances across the surface. And then a nice detail of the folks sitting a little bit further out to the right, and we see all this activity behind them. It's low tide, right? You can tell them they're out there looking for beach finds, These days, like we look for, do you ever look for beach glass? Pieces of glass that have been rounded off, so all of a sudden that Coke bottle shard looks like a gemstone, right? And they're not looking for that yet, but they're looking for other things that the beach might wash up on shore. And the woman with her skirt hiked up, right, so that she can begin to wade out to that little sandbar behind. And again, these colors that seem to reappear in so many of Boudin's pictures, these light mint greens, these wonderful sort of steely blues, that really capture a sense of the moment in time where he's painting. So this is the guy that, when we go back and look at Monet again, right, this picture starts to make all sorts of sense, doesn't it? In a way that it wouldn't if we didn't know the Boudin connection. He's being praised, that's so bad. The connection with Boudin, but right, well, the connection to Boudin is really huge for Monet because it made him realize on a certain level, appreciate the sea as a metaphor, but also as a subject matter, a place of eternal change, a place of strong weather patterns that are easy to observe, of a way of life, right? The ocean is a way of life. And so this San Andres picture is really, even though he stopped studying under Boudin 10 years probably before this was painted, right? He's with him in the 50s, right? But the lasting impact for him is absolutely crucial. And again, I think the other aspect is light and water coming out of this, right? And just so you get a sense of what we've been talking about, right? San Andres is just above Le Havre there, and these are the towns we just looked at, right? In the three pictures by Boudin. So it is all right in this epicenter of Le Havre, which is this huge tourist area that everybody from Paris could get to quite easily. Right? Now, after studying with Boudin, Monet went on to study under a different artist in the early 1860s. And this is a Dutch artist that he had met named Jonkind, Johann Barthold Jonkind. And we only have one Jonkind here. This image, this is the 1864 is the year that Monet sort of left Jonkind, stayed out on his own, established his own independent career. So our picture is nicely based at that exact same time. But again, that interest in water, right? This is a Dutch canal, but still there's an interest in weather, water, air. You can almost feel it. This was not moving as strongly, but You can almost feel how atmosphere moves between those poplars along the sides of the canal, ripples the water, and our operator of the towpath, right? The towpath is, you know what a towpath is? For canal boats. Especially when there's no wind, how are you going to move a canal boat up a canal? And if the wind's coming from the wrong direction, right? If the wind's coming anything except behind you, then the only way you can navigate is to work your way back and forth. And on a canal, you simply can't do that, right? It's just up and back. So you either got to have wind directly at your back, or you've got to have some other mode of propelling yourself, right? So you can either row it, but again, that's difficult because the canals are fairly narrow, right? Or tows. And we got tow. I don't have to tell you guys this, Georgetown, right? You just go down to the Sino Canal. Runs right through D.C. Right? There's a tow path running along the side of it. Now it's just full of joggers, right? But it goes all the way up Canal Drive, right? Past the Beltway. So that's a draft horse for pulling boats and whatnot up and down the canal. But he's obviously not working right now. It's between ships or something. Yeah? So he's still walking the towpath one maybe end of the day. He's going back home, and you can see he's stopping for a second. What's he doing there? Just see what's going on in the canal. Can you tell what's going on in the canal? What stopped him in his way? Naked people, right? Swimmers, right? So he stopped to look at this group who had taken off their clothes to jump in the water. I didn't notice it at first. I was like, yeah, that's what made him stop. So he didn't care about the cow on the other side. There's nothing there to see. But his day has been interrupted in a pleasant way by getting a chance to see some naked women frolicking in the water. Right? So, again, notice the interest in reflections. And these are not impressionist painters, right? Impressionism didn't come out of nowhere, right? These are the people that had an impact on Monet as he's a young artist, as he's staging out on his own. I didn't want to have both of these up. I don't know why they're both there. But anyway, there we are. So 1864, Monet goes out on his own. He leaves Youngkin behind. His training is over. He's going to now make his career independent artist. He's 24. Right? A bit late on the norm, and he hardly started earlier than that. Early 20s, right? 24, you're in the mid-20s more or less. It's a little late, but not entirely so. And so, in 1864, he does a series of pictures on his own. 1865, he submits them to the Salon. We talked about the Salon, right? The annual Salon of 1865. This is one of two that are accepted to the Salon of 1865, right? It's in Pasadena these days. It's one of the Seagull in California. But it was in the Salon of 1865, and it shows Honfleur is right there at the Seine. This is right where the Seine empties into the ocean. There's a lighthouse there to guide ships into the harbor, right? So it's almost as if Impression Sunrise is kind of over our right shoulder. And we're looking now the opposite direction, out to the sea. And the choppy sea, the seagulls floating on the breezes and pushing those clouds away. He's obviously interested in becoming a landscape painter, right? Because he's got these lessons from these two landscape painters in his past. He's got Youngkin and before that Boudin. So he's still here in his childhood home where he grew up and capturing the fleeting light and interested in just sort of everyday life around there. And with two pictures accepted, he's thinking this is going to be great, right? This is the life of an artist. I'm going to have some success here. And he decides that year, after having the paintings accepted to the Salon, that what he's going to do is something radically different. He's going to do a figure painting as if it were a landscape painting. Now, what I mean by that is that he's going to do a figure painting, but he's not going to pose people in the studio. He's going to pose them outside and paint them outside. in the same way that you would paint a landscape outside. Right? He's going to apply the learning he got from Budan and Budan and Yongking. He's going to apply that learning to painting the human figure. Right? And he sets out to do a work that is called Déjeuner sur l'herbe. It's luncheon on the grass in French, right? And there's a number of studies for it where he poses people outside. And this is relatively small. It's relatively small. It's only 3 feet tall. Right? So I guess it's big by student standards, right? 3 feet is pretty large. And it's one of his great friends, Germaine Bazille, posing with Monet's girlfriend, Camille, right? And they're posing just simply, he said, okay, look, I'm going to set up this part of a larger composition. And what he wants to get in this is how the light falls on the figure, right? And he has moved at this point to a very famous forest, the forest at Fontainebleau, which is the old French royal forest that has been turned over to the people as a public park after the fall of the royal dynasties, and has become a hotbed of painting, especially landscape painting, for most of the generation prior to Monet. So if you're going to paint landscapes, you're going to paint figures in a landscape, go to Fontainebleau, the forest of Fontainebleau. And so he goes there. Bazille is there painting as well. Renoir is there painting at the same time. Sisley is there painting at the same time. All these people will be part of the original Impressionist group. This is one of the first places they start to get together, is in the forest of Fontainebleau, 1865. Right? This is 2 years before Bazille comes up with the idea of an independent group. This is part of what leads to that. Okay? So there's Bazille on the left, Monet's girlfriend Camille on the right, as if I have to tell you which is which. Right? And you'll notice the way in which he's really focusing on how does light dapple down through the leaves and onto the figures. So he's interested in arranging the composition, getting the sort of the body language and the movement through the brush. That's all part of what he's interested in. But you'll notice that, again, we think about the last finishing touches here, are things like the light on his shoulder. Those bits of bright sunlight in the darkness down by her feet. The sun that hits the back of the train of her dress, the top of that. Right? These are the last things he's painted, and there's much of an interest for him. Light itself. Light, almost as if light is, almost like light is a solid for Monet. A solid thing. Not just an absence of other stuff. For us, sunlight, right, is when the clouds break away. It's an absence, and it's just, it hits. But he thinks of it almost as if it's like a piece of paper that's been dropped on the ground. Like it's a real presence, if you will, these bolts of sun. And that's even true if you look behind Bazille's right shoulder, upper left corner of the picture. How the sky is the last thing to go in, isn't it? So those are those big open areas of light are the last things that he puts into it. I love the stumbling right here, this section right in there, right? And you can see the thickness of the paint, how it's been built up and blended, right? He doesn't always play tricks. Sometimes he is blending things, and working in wet on wet and quickly. But don't you get the sense that that section there, I'm going to walk up and point out real quick. He's got that figure, he's put it in, he's got the background, he's created this darkness around it. And then, at the very end, he comes back to this mid-green, right? This acid green. Right up to the edge there, right? That's what goes up there along the edge, last in here, over here, and then brings it around their head. So that the highlights are put on top of the shadows throughout, right? And in doing so, the idea that he thinks of light is not just well-lit areas, but something falls that has to solidity in a way to hit stuff, right? And I think one thing I like best about early Monet is the way he does that, right? I find it really attractive and also kind of inspiring as a way of thinking about, hey, look at the light on Bazile's shoulder and how it seems to coat it, as if someone had walked up to Bazile in the landscape, right, stuck in a paint, right, and laid it on his shoulder and go over the top of it like that, right? Or the same thing, this Lesto, but on the side of his head helmet, yeah? The paint seems not like, I don't know, it's like, am I making clear what I'm trying to say here? Not to keep saying it? Yeah, there's a presence and a solidity to it that I think is absolutely fascinating. Now, this is being prepared for the second salon that he will ever enter. Okay, he had some success in 1865. The 64 painting went into the 1865 salon. 1865, he begins to work on this, studies for this composition. And in many ways, I think what he's doing here, and I'm not a Monet scholar, right? But this is not my take on this. He's going to establish himself. I'm here to stay, right? I'm a presence on the scene. And he's doing this in really three different ways. One, the subject matter. Déjeuner sur l'herbe, the luncheon on the grass. Does that title remind some of you of something? The luncheon on the grass? Sarah? Yeah? Huge scandal, 1863. Manet's picture of the lunch. Sorry, I have a sticky oak on my computer, and I can't figure out how to make it. Either sometimes it doesn't type, and this computer's like just over a year old. I can't take it back, right? But listen, in the grass. This is huge, right? This is about 9 feet across. Right? And it was submitted to the Salon of 1863. It was rejected. It was a huge scandal, right? And that's only 2 years before this. And in 1865, at the Salon of 1865, when Monet gets those two landscapes in, there's another Manet, the Olympia, the nude woman that we saw briefly in the last class. She is accepted to the Salon of 1865, and there's another huge scandal around her. So he knows Manet. There's not a doubt in anybody's mind that he knows Manet's work. And eventually they know each other, right? At this point, he definitely knows his work, so he's challenging it, right? He said, hey, I'm going to make a vision, I'm going to make one that's going to get accepted, right? I'm going to make one that's better. One, they'll leave their clothes on. That'll help a lot. But two, I'm also going to demonstrate with that what we now think of as the Impressionist principle of painting, which is to paint it outside. Manet did not paint outside. Manet never painted outside, except small sketches. But these things are painted inside, and they're small. So he's challenging that, right? And again, a 3 by 2.5 foot canvas, that's easy to pick up. Right? So titling it this is a way of saying I'm going to establish myself as a success where other people who are maybe better painters than I am, he's 25, right? Other people are maybe better painters than I am, they've failed. I'm going to succeed. Okay. Nothing is not too spot, right? Okay. So that's one way in which this is very challenging. The other way is to go to Fontainebleau. Fontainebleau was the home of the great landscape painters of the previous generation. Look at them very briefly before. People like Rousseau were painting in the Fontainebleau forest. Right? They became known as the Barbizon school of painters. So he's got a sort of a double challenge here. He's challenging Manet, and he's the new generation of Barbizon painters. Right? Barbizon is the town near Fontainebleau. They became known as Barbizon painters. Right? So two ways in which he's saying, I'm here to stay. Right? This painting, this what we have to study for, is a really important painting insofar as what Monet sees his trajectory being. Okay? Third way, I mentioned 3. It was going to be 15 by 20 feet. The painting, 15 by 20 feet. That is the front of his room back to Canton. Right? That wall. That's probably 15 by 20 feet, right? Maybe even a little taller. So he's never going to finish it outside. He's going to studies outside and then work it inside. He can't take a 15 by 20 foot canvas outside. Right? It's never finished. He never finished it. In fact, he rolled it up, stowed it in the back of his studio. 12 years later, 1878, he gives it to his landlord because he's behind on his rent. He uses it in the back, and it's cut into pieces. Right? So parts of it are gone. The more finished parts remain. If you go to the Orsay Museum in Paris, you can see it's really very poorly painted. It's not completed, but it's blocked in. Right? But, yeah, that's roughly 15 feet tall. Monster pit. So this is a statement picture, right? This is really Monet in 1865 saying, I'm going to do this. And he's going to submit it now to the Salon of 1866. It's just simply, right, he doesn't get it done. He has other things he submits. And everything's all well and good, right? Because this project was far too ambitious, he decided to scale it back a bit. And in 1866, he starts a different picture where he's going to submit this to the Salon of 1867. A little bit more humble inside, but he's going to take that idea, right, the impressionist or landscape approach to figure painting. He's going to take that idea and he's going to make it work. He's going to finish the sucker and get it in there. And so he goes out into the garden, paints this, has Camille pose for each of the women 3 different times over, right? So it may look like it's a single scene, but it's sort of like a time-lapse photo in a way, right? That's an analogy. So go sit, study some flowers under a parasol, Camille. Okay, great. Now go over there and talk to my friend, who's giving you flowers, okay? And then go play hide and seek, right? And each one of them he paints her. This is his finished attempt at that same idea. I'm going to paint figural paintings in the garden, right? In the out of doors. Where am I now? Here. The canvas is still huge. It's 8.5 feet tall. Right? So the figures are roughly a little bit less than life size, right? 4 feet tall or so. What's 8.5 feet, right? I'm 5'9". I don't think I can reach 8.5. That's not 8 feet. My arm's not 3 feet long. My arm's maybe 3 feet long, so 8.5 would be 5.5. Yeah, right. Give or take, right? That's how big this is. Okay, so that's a little bit smaller than its real size. And in order to paint this in his garden, he dug a trench. Set up a pulley with a winch. So he could stand there and help the top. Trying to paint the middle, right? And to bring it up as well. So there's this big trench he had set up. Right? Submits this one. It's finished, right? He's able to scaling it back by half the size or a quarter of the size up. He submits to the Salon of 1867 and it is rejected. Right? All that work. And while it's hard to say 100% sure why it's rejected, one of the issues is, of course, what we're looking at with Monet, what we love about him today, the broken quality of the brushwork, the avant-garde way, the untraditional way that he's applying the paint. That is not the way they taught it in the academy. These things, people think they're making fun of them. People think that he's mocking the need for training. But the other issue, and this was brought up by some of the critics at the time, is what the hell's going on here? What's the narrative? What are these people doing? Are they doing anything? And that was for Manet with his Lunch on the Grass. That was part of the problem. It wasn't a story. It was just, And art was supposed to have higher purposes. Now, landscapes were okay if they're landscapes, but figure paintings should have a higher purpose. They should tell great moral stories from ancient mythology, Roman history, right? The gods, the Caesars. And not just something that isn't really noteworthy from everyday life. That has always been a problem for the jurors at the Salon. And that's exactly what Monet is giving us. And that's exactly, I think, one of the reasons the Impressionists to this day are an important movement in art. Is that the subject matter of Impressionist art is the Impressionists' own lives. What they see, what they experience, the people around them. The subject matter is not outside of them. Right? And if we think about that, just separate that idea out from being about the Impressionists. So the art is about their own individual experience. That's modern. That's all of modern art right there. That's Expressionism. Own personal experience. Right? That's performance art. That's Dada. That's surrealism. Right? The dream world of your own, where you know the interpretation. And I don't care jack squat if anybody else gets it. It's my experience in the work. The Impressionists are there. And that's what's seen as a bit of a problem. Right? There is no narrative. Now, I hate projecting psychology in these things, but part of me thinks that getting this rejected was for Monet not easy thing, right? He's got grand ambitions shown by the luncheon on the grass picture. He really has ambitions to be, the next big thing. And to get his finished version of it, right? The scaled back, you have to be tall, finished version of it, rejected, it must have just been harrowing in a way, So works accepted the next year, 68, but then in 69 it gets rejected again, and I think in 1872, 70 as well, he also gets rejected, right? And these rejections, then we get the war, and when he comes back, he never goes to the Salon again one time after that for the rest of his career. He lived till 1927 or something. No, he stopped after 1870. After he got rejected 3 years out of 4, 3 years out of 5 in the late 60s, right, early 70s. Then, during the Prussian War, there isn't a Salon, right, because of the war, and when he comes back, he stops submitting to the Salon. And he only does it once that I read in 88 or something like that. He submits to the Salon. I think he gets accepted as well. But he lives, the water lily pictures, which we don't have a good example of here, but the water lily pictures of the 1920s, okay, they're after World War I. He lives a very long time. He dies in the late 20s. He dies when surrealism is getting started. That's how long Monet lives, right? He outlives futurism. Right? He outlives Dada. He is around forever, into his 90s. And those great pictures of water lilies at the end of his career are from the 20s. And none of that was ever given to any of the official salons again. Right? And all because he was, I think now we can say, yeah, it must have been devastating, right? And that's part of the reason why we get the Impressionists. Is exactly that, right? All right, we need to have somewhere else where we can put our stuff. Heck with them, right? Life's too short. First Monet, he lives for another 60 years, right? But still, life is too short to deal with that. Well, what's interesting is the answer to some interior pieces at the end of the 60s. And I tried to find something, interesting or profound about these pictures, but I couldn't. I've always found them incredibly mysterious. And they do seem to imply narrative, don't they? And maybe it's because we're inside, right? There was a book I couldn't get my hands on the Impressionists indoors, which is fascinating. But you can see he's still, I think, in many ways, what he was trying to do outside, which is to make a picture in a landscape mode of the human figure. I think he's still kind of doing that. Look at the way the light from that lamp at the table becomes a very palpable presence on the side of that chair, especially on the seat of that chair. Right? That little area just in here, where you can see he's come back and just laid that paint down, right, at the end. That's the same effects we saw him doing in the outside. You can see it over here in The Women in the Garden, the sunlight on the path is laid down the same way, where it becomes this very solid, different color on top of what's beneath it. The wonderful bits of the highlights of the reflections of the tea or coffee service on the table with those jittery lines that are the same color more or less as the highlights on the top of that chair or on the front edge of that table. Right? Look at the embers in the fire. How the coal, and again, this idea that the background becomes the last thing he puts in, right? Because the coals in the fire are deep inside, right? They're down underneath the log. They're behind everything, and yet here it sits right on the top, where again it's that solid presence on top of everything else. When I was looking for stuff on this, I found that. This isn't at the National Gallery, it says none of it. It's almost as if he really is implying some sort of narrative with these pictures. And get rid of the figures. It's like you got two canvases with exactly the same layout, right? Chair, table, lamp seen from the same position, and I'll rearrange the figures in the two of them. Right? Well, you can see into the shadow for sure, because we've got the woman serving, right? And then, yeah, he's added a little something more to the curtains behind the gent leaning on the sill there. I gotta tell you, the one on the right always creeps me out. There's just something there that's dynamic, and I can't put my finger on it. The maid. Well, it is, but isn't that the way a moneyed family should see the help? You know, they're there, but they're not there. Did you watch Downton Abbey? Right. The whole point of being a servant is not to be seen or heard from. Right. You're there when you need to be, and you're waiting when you're not, and you meld into the background. So they're busy eating. I love the little kid. Right. He just had a baby at this point too. Right? Monet had just had Camille. They weren't married yet. They didn't get married until 1870, but in 1867, Camille gave birth to their first child. In fact, okay, and there's Camille looking. Yeah, this is so cute, right? He's got his little pinwheel and his little drum, right, with things that he goes, pop, 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 makes noise. And Camille dutifully. Maybe it's a handmaid looking after him. But at the same time, that idea of domesticity, I think, is playing in these as well, right? These evening scenes. And if you're going to do an interior landscape, then this artificial light is, I think, what he's most interested in, right? How it lands on things, how it plays on things. So there's little baby Jean. I can't remember his name now. Claude's son, Monet, who had just been born. Camille's dad was pissed off because baby out of wedlock and whatnot, right? And refused to help them. Wouldn't even give them a dime. Right? Monet's pictures weren't selling. He was getting rejected from the salon with some frequency. Needed some money to make ends meet, and Camille's dad would have nothing to do with him because he's the guy that knocked up his daughter, right? And didn't want anything to do with him until they got married, which didn't happen until 1870. So there's little baby, and I've got a nice detail too. Right? Mostly I've read said it was Camille, but again, look at these fascinating bits of how he's laying the paint down. That piece that goes back over the dark. The light over the dark. And you know the dark's got to be good and dry before you can do that and get away with it, right? You know what I'm talking about? Is this area right in here, right? Whatever that is underneath it, that ochreish green has got to be really, really dry before you can come back over the top of it with a thinned out pigment like that. Other areas that are just show such an amazing talent and look quick, and the question is whether or not they are bits like that part of her collar, where you can begin to almost sense exactly how it was painted. And at the same time, we can see other areas where the paint that he's applying is incredibly dry, and it's skidding across texture that's been laid down in another pigment, almost as if the other pigment doesn't matter. Right? The other pigment is there to create the texture that his brush can drag across. We're out of time. I was going to have a nice little conversation about psychology in pictures. When we look at a woman's picture, Morris's picture of her sister with a child, and Monet's picture. And with this, well, you tell me, maybe do this. This week, for a minute, right? Psychology of the two pictures, side by side. Which one captures the tenderness of the moment more? Which one seems more in tune with the baby and its needs? How does she pull that off? What gives you that, Joe?
I feel like you can see more of the mother's face.
The mother's not an anonymous.
Yeah, you can't really get the mother's expression in Renee. So
I think you can get some of it. There's this idea of care, yeah. Yeah. Look at the baby's face, too.
And I think her arm is up on the crib as well.
That's one wonders if you, the Monet's baby's like, God damn it, I've given him all of these toys and he's still kind of, look at the look on the baby's face, those beady dark zombie eyes, right? And he's just going, I don't like your little toys. And then he's spent all this money on them. And the other one is just so happy, sleeping, he's got his arm up like this, So it's an interesting thing about whether or not men can men even get it? Right? Do men understand the whole parenting thing or not? For Monet, he's got him a nice crib, he's got somebody to sit with him next to a bed so they can sleep right there. And I bought him all these toys, and he's still just as angry as can be. Right. Okay, so Tuesday, if something goes wrong with the cabs and whatnot, I will let you know by email sort of before, like Monday or something. But Tuesday, plan to get in front of the main house as fast as you can after your 3:15, and we'll go to the National Gallery. Come to homecoming this weekend if you can. Even if you don't want to work it, you can still come. You don't have to hide. And come and just enjoy the weekend, because it should be a lot of fun. All right. Otherwise, have a good weekend.